Welcome to Annie Armen from whyanniearmen.com, and good afternoon to you, Annie.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on board, and good afternoon, Daniel.
Annie, tell me a little bit about why Annie Armen is a communications company that works for people.
Because it speaks from the heart and it speaks their language.
Okay. And knowing that language is a big part of any relationship building, how do you go about teaching people to utilise language in the way that they build relationships?
Normally through interaction and engagement, but the key focus in everything that I do is making sure that the person who's in front of me or working with me or communicating with me in whatever capacity, that they are experiencing with me. And that is so important.
How do you mean experiencing?
Well, when you're talking with someone makes a difference compared to when you're communicating with someone. And this is something that I actually spoke at Malaysia. And I asked the class, and I said to a group of college students, I said, do you like being talked to or do you like being communicated with? Doesn't matter whether you know, I said, what those two mean. But which one sounds better to you and why? And immediately everyone chose communicate with, but not being talked to. So automatically in that instant, interaction was created, engagement was created, and as a result of that, there's experience being created. So in other words, when you feel like you are part of something with someone who's communicating with you eye to eye, but not down, because I may think I have a bigger profession than you, or I may know more people than you. When you're at eye-to-eye level and heart-to-heart level, the person before you knows. They know you're communicating with them. So that's the main part of the experience, when they can feel that comfortable with you and they can feel one with you.
Okay, so knowing that people can feel at one with you, when you're starting a business relationship, what are the first steps involved in actually creating that relationship? You know, we don't want to go in there and pitch to this person
Absolutely
and be a salesperson, but we still want to get a sale, obviously. There's got to be an end result.
Well, absolutely. First of all, when you're going into that mindset, you're going into the realm of business. One must understand that there's already that given. The person being approached knows there's business going on, and the person who's obviously approaching for business has in their mindset, business. So go in there saying, okay, I'm going to embrace the new. I'm going to connect, not just meet, but connect with potential prospects, but treat them as people, treat them as beings. Give them attention. Put your focus on them rather than focus on what you're selling. Automatically, when you make everything about them, they're going to come back at you and ask you questions about what you do without you having to push it down their throat. There's automatic communication going on at that point.
Okay. In your communications business, you're an author, you're
Yes.
a trainer, you're a speaker.
Yes.
When you speak to various groups, what kind of message do you deliver to them that they can take home with them?
How important communication is. I mean, I know it's simple, but sometimes, as my client always reminds me of, less is more. Communication is key in every aspect of your life, whether that be personal, whether that be professional. And when you are comfortable in the way that you communicate with others, they will know. So as a takeaway, it's so important that you are authentic. You're going in genuine, not trying to up somebody else or trying to be better than somebody else, because people in front of you, they're not stupid. They're savvy. Business people or people in general, they're savvy. They can tell the difference from the real article versus a clone. So the more refreshing you are, the more genuine you are, the better results you're going to get. And not just for the short term, Daniel, that's the best part. You're going to get long-term results, long-term impact. In fact, I'm sure many of your listeners, they watch the X Factor. I mean, that's a big thing. And when the judges, Simon and all these people, what is the one thing they keep emphasizing with all of the artists? It's about being different, being genuine, being refreshing.
Being original.
Being original, exactly. That applies, and that is an aspect of business, is it not?
Yeah.
Business, it's important to be you. Bottom line, you have to be you.
Yeah, and I think too many people probably subscribe to the notion that we have to conform to a corporate culture, which, you know, in as much as you need to make sure you're doing things a certain way, you should still have latitude for individuality in that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The corporate culture, let's view it as a system. And it's a system that has rules, has a system that has disciplines already in place. Why cannot we learn from that? Of course we can, if we choose to. But then, when you bring in your individuality while working within the system, you'll actually make headway. But if you're just going to be part of the pack, and you're just, you know, oh, it's corporate, I'm going in for my paycheck, I'm not going to, you know, I'm just going to be there from 8 to 5 and go, what results are you really achieving even in that corporate culture? So sometimes, for example, Daniel, if you're in a big corporate culture, right, and you've done your task at hand, if you will, and you completed in excellence, but you saw a little flaw, what would you do? Take the position of an employee, because those are the rules, I'm an employee and I'm going to leave here by whatever time I'm supposed to go, or out of loyalty, because you know why you're there, and because you're all about excellence, regardless of whether they see or they don't, you're going to go in professional responsibility to be genuine and communicate that flaw so that a resolution can come out of it. Which one would you choose?
Yeah, you've got to go with the one that feels right for you, don't you?
Absolutely, absolutely. So it really comes down to that. And that's why communication is so important. And with communication, of course, comes responsibility, comes accountability. And this is where people sometimes can fall through the cracks.
When we think about communication as a business tool,
Absolutely.
How can you actually teach people to communicate better? What kind of words of advice do you have for people? Do you set courses? Or is it kind of you tailor the communication to the communication needs of individual groups?
Well, it all depends, of course, to the group. Whether if you're going to go present and be a keynote, for example, for a corporate level group, is quite different of a presentation than when you are being, you're approaching a group of college students or high school students. Again, it's never one size fits all. It's so important to scan the audience. And even if it's a corporate culture, you can even tell, are they the dynamic type of individuals that are ready to receive, ready to stretch their minds and heart? Then you can push the envelope a little bit. Or are they in their analytical state of mind and they're wondering, what is he going to talk about, or what is she going to talk about? When you can already sense the skepticism going on just by their expressions, and accordingly, you can catch them off guard and provoke their thoughts to the point where you can bring the dynamics out of them. So everything is sensitive depending on how sensitive you choose to be, but not in the way that sensitive has been pegged as negative. No, meaning being in tune with the who part of what, when you're bringing your communication on board. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. Which leads me to the next point. Why Annie Armen? Why did you call it Why Annie Armen? Why is your business called that?
I am very grateful that you are asking me that question, because that's the first question that I asked myself when I was 5 years old. Why am I here? Now I know and I realize, and I have been told ad nauseum, that is not the typical question a child asks. I heard it, Lord knows, I heard it from my family, I heard it from teachers, professors. But I was looking around, Daniel, and I knew that there was something awkward maybe or different that was in me, because I was asking questions that people were thinking were peculiar, and I was saying, why are they thinking it's peculiar when it's coming naturally out of me? And that tended to create mystery, and mystery leads to curiosity, and curiosity leads to more questions, and more questions leads to interaction, and interaction leads to engagement, and engagement goes to communication, and there's the thought process, right? And that's exactly what transpired. So as I, growing since childhood years and into the business world, I'm always encouraging the why. Because 9 times out of 10, Daniel, even on my radio interviews, the so-called self-claimed experts, when I've asked them, what are your top 3 core values that drive you in your business, that make you thrive and you succeed? I kid you not, Daniel, they blank out on me. Oh, that's a great question. Okay, I'm waiting for the answer, right? And they're thinking. Now, this is not to downplay them. Many of us, and I included myself, it took me years to come down to my top 3 core values, and then in preferential order, literally. That took a long time for me. Didn't come overnight. And sometimes it's right under your nose. But in order to come to your 3 core values, and in sequential order, is when you know your why. And if you know your why, you have your clarity of direction. And when you know you have that clarity, your performance, your productivity, everything soars.
Okay, so let me ask you, what are your top 3 core values?
In order?
Yeah.
Faith, power, and performance.
Fantastic.
Those are my top 3. Daniel, may I ask you what your 3 are?
Persistence, loyalty, and patience.
Now, you've got persistence, loyalty, and patience, right? And I said faith, power, and performance. Do you realize in just these 6 words how many interpretations can be drawn from what those words individually mean to you versus what they mean to the listener?
Yeah. Many different permutations, probably as different as the amount of people there are on the planet.
Absolutely.
Everyone has an individual interpretation of those kind of things.
And do you see what just happened? I just created, as a result of us communicating just those 3 core values, and you asking me that question, there's communication happening, there's interaction happening, and what are we doing? We're experiencing, and we're drawing in people who are listening in right now, and they're thinking, what are my core values? And what does Annie mean by power? Or what does Daniel mean by persistence? Is it the average term as the Webster Dictionary defines? Not necessarily. It's your daily habits, your daily thought process, the choices that you make, and the actions that you take to follow through on those choices that truly define and align with those values. It really comes down to this one question. Are you living what you value most every day? So Daniel, are you living what you value most every day? And I don't mean to switch roles on you.
I was just about to say.
And I thank you for allowing me that.
I think yes, to a certain degree, and probably not as much as I should. But the question I have for you, Annie, now that I'm back in the interviewer role, is...
You are the interviewer.
Is...
And I thank you again.
Are you living your core values every day?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you were to ask me, what is it that I value most, and if I'm living that every day, it's communication. Now, I know my values are faith, power, and performance, but that's what drives the one thing that I live, and it's what I breathe, and it's my calling. It's like you said earlier about communication, author, broadcaster. Some of your listeners may not know I'm a drummer. I sing. Everything under communication, how you communicate with people, because some people, they like to listen. Some people like to see. They understand, they receive better, they interact better. So everyone's different and every detail matters.
So when you're talking about communication, do you touch on learning styles and how each communication, a type of communication, can help a learning style?
Can you be more clear when you say
Well,
learning
you know,
style?
when we're talking about, so some you were just talking about then, some people are auditory,
Yes,
some
yes.
people are visual, some people are kinesthetic, other people react simply to a cue from a smell, like an olfactory cue, or even a tactile cue from touching something. Do you talk about how those kind of things can
Absolutely.
interact and how they help with communication?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have discovered, Daniel, even as a child in test-taking situations where I was placed in a position where I was able to tutor kids, my age no less, who were failing, being called stupid, when really they were brilliant. It's just that they were not able to retain the information that was being taught to them real time. They needed to see. They needed pictures to understand. And some people, like speakers, some speakers are great at storytelling. Why? Because that's how they're able to absorb. When they hear other people speak, they prefer to hear the speaker that depicts a message through storytelling. It resonates with them. They align with it. They connect with it. And therefore, they can present it in that capacity and probably even better with others because they're passionate about it. So absolutely, I touch upon those things. And again, it comes down to this, Daniel. Every detail matters. Every detail matters. And make no mistake, every person has the gift to communicate if they tap into it. But there is this one thing that stops them, and they're their worst enemy, and that's their fears. Societal fears, norms, traditional way of thinking, all these aspects, all these ingredients, when you put them all in a bowl, they have so many rocks. You know, you've seen that presentation with the bowl with all the rocks and one after the next, and it's so hard to get all the way to the root of it because they've allowed for it to pile up for so many years. So they have to go one by one, and many people aren't willing to do that. So they take the short fix, and then they wonder why there are conflicts.
So, Annie, great to actually hear from you about what you've been doing. Tell us a little bit about how people can get in contact with you through your website at anniearmen.com.
Absolutely. That would be the best way. That's the main website.
Okay, and what other website have you actually got?
I also have a blog at Why Annie Armen.
whyanniearmen.com.
That is correct.
And of course there'll be an email address on there as well.
There is an email. There is a place called Contact Me. So when they click on that, they can email me.
Excellent.